CBS Sports Insider Aditi Kinkhabala saying the Steelers are not done with quarterbacks, that they got more coming, that a room full of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and Kyle Allen just isn't enough. And you got to wonder, where do they go from here? Let me ask you this before I dive into not one, but two names that I think could be on the radar, especially one that I've heard the Steelers have a lot of interest in. Did you see it coming that the Steelers were going to add a fourth quarterback, that they're still not done despite everything going on and everything that has happened to this point?
Well, because I'm an avid listener of all Steelers talk, one, because it's my job, and two, because, it's a very good show. Yeah. I know that the Steelers always like to take four quarterbacks into training camp. So the thought that they would bring in another name is not surprising. Now, who the name is, it might become a surprise, but I do think that it's not that surprising that they're looking for a fourth quarterback in general.
Yeah, I looked at it and said, okay, yeah, you need a four. I won't lie to you. I was more surprised of Kyle Allen than I would be of an NFL draft quarterback. I was more shocked that you were just going to go with the 28-year-old veteran to be your QB3 in a year where you already have two guys on one-year deals. This doesn't really make sense to have just three veteran quarterbacks and then start all over a year from now. I thought they would have been looking for, if Justin Fields is the backup moving forward or the starter moving forward, if Russell Wilson is here long-term, their fourth quarterback would be looking to be their second quarterback in 2025. Kyle Allen is not that guy. So I don't know. I was very surprised. They do always carry four quarterbacks. This year was different for me, and I'll tell you why, because everybody's going to talk. You're going to talk fourth quarterback. That's what happens. I viewed this as another Chris Oladokun situation. I looked at it as the Steelers bring in four quarterbacks. I get it. That's what they typically do. Cool. But the last time the Steelers brought in four quarterbacks and had a quarterback competition, there was no reps left. And if they're going to have a quarterback competition this year, I mean, who's getting left out because of you leaving Kyle Allen out and just saying, okay, we know what we have in you. We know who you are as an NFL quarterback. We don't really need to see anything. We more so have to see if this rookie is good enough to stay on the roster. Or are they going to draft a mid to late round rookie and view it as this guy's not going to get any reps and he's going to be the next Chris Oladokun and nobody's going to remember him and everybody's going to make fun of the fact that the Steelers drafted another quarterback and didn't give him a real opportunity? Because if Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are really competing, and I get it, that pole position, this is Russell Wilson's job until he loses the job, but I still see Justin Fields getting a good chunk of reps because the Steelers want to see what they have in this guy, even if it's not for this season, it's for next season and moving forward. Where are you coming up with the last bit of reps there? Where are you coming up with a QB4 taking any amount of reps? And I was there during the Chris Oladokun. Like, it's not easy to find these reps because as much as everybody wants to say, like, the backups are out there, you're going to keep Russ healthy, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you're going to work with your first team more often than you're going to work with your backups. You're going to do 2-minute drills with your first guys more so than you are your backups. I'm confused on where the reps are going to come from. And I think that's the biggest question is Kyle Allen going to be the guy out, or is this rookie going to be a waste of a draft pick? So I'll give you two names. The first one's Joe Milton. We've talked about Joe Milton 100 times on this show. We will continue to talk about Joe Milton until next Saturday when he ends up on another team somewhere else or he ends up in Pittsburgh. But that's been the name that I have been told throughout this draft process. From the second I arrived in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, the first quarterback, the only quarterback name that was tossed at me was Joe Milton. The Steelers love Joe Milton. He's got a great arm. They think that he's capable of developing into something, even if they don't know what that is yet. And everybody's talking about, I mean, there's those rumors that I saw this morning about him playing tight end. Maybe, but I still think the Steelers would take a shot at him. And worst case scenario, you just say, all right, yeah, maybe you are a tight end. Maybe you are the next Logan Thomas or Tyree Jackson. Maybe that's how it works out. But for right now, we'll give you an opportunity at quarterback. Joe Milton would be my guess if I had to, pick one guy that I saw the Steelers drafting. Second option, I think, and people are either going to get real mad at this or they're going to be real excited about this, is Spencer Rattler. South Carolina quarterback, former Oklahoma Sooner, a guy that a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, was viewed as potentially a top 10 pick. This guy could turn into the best quarterback in the country, and he could be the guy. And then Caleb Williams shows up, and Spencer Rattler's out of there. He's no longer the guy. He's a name that I know the Steelers like. They really liked what they saw at the Senior Bowl. They, continued to kind of scout him. They had their eyes on him throughout this entire process. I could see him being a name as well, depending on how high or low he goes. I see Spencer Rattler climbing up this draft board. And I think if he goes before the fourth round, he's not an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If he's there in the fourth round, maybe. Does it even make sense for the Steelers, though, to go out and get anybody before the sixth round in this NFL draft?
No, I think if you're going to get somebody, it's going to be in the 6th or 7th round. If you're the Steelers, you're not going to waste a draft pick, certainly not in the top 4 rounds in the first 2 days on a quarterback when you have these other needs. Now, centers obviously one, lines one. We've talked about them ad nauseum over the last couple of weeks, and I'm excited to see who they get in next week. But I think it'd be silly to think that the Steelers would spend draft capital higher than a 6th round pick on a quarterback. But that's why I think Joe Milton lines up really well with the Steelers, because that's right in the sweet spot for where he's going to end up going.
I agree. I agree. I think if he doesn't climb up these draft boards, which there's a chance that he climbs up the draft boards, but to be honest, the tight end thing lowers his draft value. If people are talking about him becoming a tight end and they're not totally certain what position he's going to be, teams are going to avoid that because they're going to look at it and say, nah, that's a project. We don't really want a project just yet. We're going to hold off at least until the 5th, maybe the 6th round. And if he's there, if he's there in the 6th round, I don't care whether there's other positions in need. That's the guy. That's the one guy in this draft class that late in the draft class, I look at it and say, that's a guy you take a shot on because he's got the arm strength. He's dominated in college football for a couple of years. He's really lit up the scoreboard. He's a dude that's got enough potential and just enough athleticism that you could try to figure something out. And for a 6th round pick, who cares? This isn't Tim Tebow going in the 1st round. This isn't Johnny Manziel going in the 1st round. This is a 6th round pick. At 6th round pick, you're just looking for anybody who's going to work. Maybe Joe Milton's going to work. Maybe he's not. And I could see Joe Milton being a long-term backup in the NFL, and the Steelers are looking for a long-term backup behind whoever's their guy is the next 4 to 5 years, which if I had to guess is probably Justin Fields right now, but they're looking for a number 2. Kyle Allen's not the number 2. When it comes to Spencer Rattler, the 4th round, I'm not a Spencer Rattler guy to begin with, but I know that the Pittsburgh Steelers do like Spencer Rattler. I know that they've got their eyes a little bit on Spencer Rattler. I could see him being a name. Everybody tosses out there Jordan Travis. Everybody likes Jordan Travis. I'm a big Jordan Travis guy, but I don't think that the Steelers are as interested in Jordan Travis as I think other teams are, or as much as they are in Spencer Rattler. You hear the name Spencer Rattler. What are your thoughts?
I immediately go right back to the Senior Bowl. He was the one quarterback that had a good week that week. And we talked about Michael Penix having a rough week. We talked about Bo Nix having a rough week down there in Mobile. The one guy that showed up and showed out, and that is the Mike Tomlin Classic, as it were, was Spencer Rattler. So you had to know that he had a leg up on the competition after that week. But I hear that name, and I hear the same thing that I hear with Joe Milton with a little bit less upside. That's all I hear. The Joe Milton has the upside because we've all seen the clips. We all saw the pro day clips. The dude has an absolute cannon. And if you can mold that into an NFL quarterback, the intangibles are there. The upside is there. And the same thing with Spencer Rattler. He's somebody that has a little bit more experience. He's a little bit more pro ready, but I just don't think he has the same upside, and he's going higher in the draft. So to me, it makes more sense to skew Milton in this sense than it is to go with Rattler.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a Rattler guy as it is. I'm avoiding Spencer Rattler almost at all costs. Joe Milton, I feel okay about. Anybody else I don't think is really on their board. I'm shocked that Aditi said, hey, they're going to add a 4th to begin with. But once you start thinking about it and diving into it, I even made some phone calls. This happened yesterday, and I started sending some texts, making some phone calls. I talked to some people last night, and there was nothing. There was nothing. There was no names given to me. Not one. It was, we've talked about Joe Milton before. Why? What are we talking about next? I don't know. I'm trying to guess because nobody's told me anything. So where is she getting this from? I could see it. I don't know. I could see maybe you add another guy. I saw Trace McSorley's name tossed in there. Maybe, I guess. I don't know. And I think at that point, Joe Milton makes sense. Maybe somebody else makes sense. If you're going to draft somebody, I think Kyle Allen's time in Pittsburgh is limited to just an off season. But it kind of shocks me. It kind of shocks me. I just don't know the direction that they're going in with the bottom of this depth chart, and it just doesn't make much sense how they're kind of laying this out and the way they're kind of going about it. QB4 makes sense in a normal year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It makes sense next year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. When there's a quarterback competition, I think we saw it with Chris Oladokun. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough reps. There's just not enough reps.
Well,
I
was going to say, from a draft perspective, the only way that it kind of makes sense is one of the positions we talked about double dipping early in the draft and late in the draft is cornerback. They did it last year with Joey Porter and Corey Trice, and then they also added another rookie last year in Darius Rush. So they have those projects in the secondary. The only question to me would be, at that point, do you want to double dip at wide receiver, which we expect them to take a receiver earlier in the draft, or do you want to add a guy like a Joe Milton? And I think that's where the question ends up being on Saturday of next week is, do they want another wide receiver, or do they want a project at quarterback that they can try to mold into that number 2?
That's what I'm saying. Where are you going there? And I think Brandon Ayuk trade and all these trades and all these rumors kind of decide that. Mark Kaboli said that he predicts that the Steelers have cheaper options. I'm telling you, John Mechie, look for the name John Mechie. I think it's going to happen. The more we gear up for it, Brandon Ayuk, I think, is still very much so on the board. I don't know. I don't know where you're going. I don't know what you're doing. And you have enough draft picks to get all of your major needs right off the bat. Once it comes to the end of the draft, it's kind of just like a pick a situation, but you got to get to that point before you start taking dumb picks. And I think a quarterback is a bit of a dumb pick. Just doesn't, there's nothing there. There's nothing there.